you have
Sure.
to see. And I'm not sure how we should start off, but you already answered one of my questions because you used the same phrase I've used, that this allowing Donald Trump in the White House is really one of the greatest counterintelligence failures in history. And how is it possible that we allowed this to happen? How you were with the FBI, and I think both of our institutions have failed. For me, the media has failed, but I always thought the FBI was supposed to keep us safe from this kind of thing happening.
Yeah, and I think that you hit it the nail right on the head. As the FBI was principal agency organization holding back the tidal wave of corruption in this country. And so I think what we're going through now is, from my perspective as a former FBI agent in nearly 17 years, is if you remove the control, if you remove the fire break, if you remove the very organization trying to hold back corruption, what happens? And you get maybe a singularity point. What's your perspective on that?
I looked into this and I did deal with some of the questions in my books, and I started to see some very disturbing things in the FBI. One was that there were two directors of the FBI. William Sessions was one, and Louis Freeh was the other. And after he retired from the FBI, Sessions, as an attorney, started representing Semyon Mogilevich, one of the key people in the Russian mafia. He was on the FBI most wanted list. And how is it that the head of the FBI ends up taking on him as a client? And when you realize he's making millions of dollars from that, and you're supposed to be investigating people like Mogilevich, what is that to do you? The other person, of course, was Louis Freeh, who had been director of the FBI and ended up representing Prevazon, which was famous in the Magnitsky scandal. But so if you are a special agent for the FBI investigating corruption from Russia or Russians trying to win over Americans as assets, what does it do to you when you see your former boss is raking in millions from Russian mobsters?
For me, it is demoralizing. And from my perspective, it's very different because I was a non-political person. I registered as a non-party affiliate. At times, some of the information I took in would hurt. When I started working public corruption, foreign influence, more and more, as I saw it as the greatest threat that was facing this country, quite honestly, from within, are those willing to entertain the overtures of foreign people trying to influence our politics, such as Putin. At times, some of the information I took in and reported hurt the left, the political left. And there are other times where some of the information I reported might hurt the political right. And it's really not up to me to make that decision. So I was a collector. And it is what it is. The FBI's job is not to decide who to indict, it's to just find the truth. When they find the truth, then you got the Department of Justice and the federal prosecutors who come and they decide what to do. I'm sitting there, I'm basically like an umpire. I'm collecting the information, I'm bringing back the goods. And at the same time, I was seeing things being spun in the media. I was a frontline collector talking to these people. I'm seeing the media spinning it one way or the other, and it's a hard thing to watch. But what happened is around 2017, 2018, the quality control in the media really went down. It's like someone could say anything, and people would get a lot of media exposure. And basically, the Russians hacked the election and got in. And one thing led to another. You got a first term, and then you have a break. Things put on pause with Biden, and then we got a second term. And he really came out of the gate this time, and it was different because he had a lot of loyalists in key positions. So he was able to pursue his agenda. The regime, as I call it, was able to pursue its agenda much quicker. So if you don't mind, let's back up a little bit, just a little bit. So I just to get an idea. So you've been doing this. I've been doing this for about going on 20 years now, but you've been doing this about 50 years in the open source and written a lot of books, some of them New York Times bestsellers. So I was going to ask you, after 50 years of investigative journalism, what originally drew you towards investigating organized crime and public corruption, intelligence operations, and political influence?
Going way back to when I started in journalism, it seemed to me at the time, and I'm going back to the late 60s, early 70s, I graduated college in 71. There were stories. Seymour Hersh did the My Lai massacre. Daniel Ellsberg and Neil Sheehan. Daniel Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon